And welcome to the Rush Roundtable, episode number 215, where we discuss Time and Motion from the Test for Echo album. In this episode, we have Ryder, we have David, there's Kira, and Ralph is joining us. Also, a little bit, feel free to always remember to subscribe, ring the bell, like these videos. Feel free to share these videos, and also now you can check out Ko-fi, which will have a link in the description. And we also have some sponsors, which you might want to check out. Video description links are all available. Now, with that in mind, let's actually begin looking at the song. So there's an instrumental interlude. I'm sorry, an interlude. How foolish of me. An intro. We're introducing the song. So a little bit of a 10-8 kind of E power chord happening with some staccato hits to kind of get it rather punchy. And then Leifson gets into the arpeggiated line. Anyone have anything to say about that?
I think this song definitely very, very standout opening compared to everything we've seen so far from Test for Echo, and especially what we'll kind of see after it, not to get too far ahead. But this song definitely has a different kind of vibe to it compared to the rest of the songs on Test for Echo. One of the big things I kind of hear a lot of people say about this track is that this along with Driven is one of the most Rush sounding tracks on this album, at least to say compared to some of the other material on this. Time and Motion, I feel, is a song that might be a little bit more consistent to what people kind of come to expect from this band. And I think this intro does a really great job of just showing like, hey, Rush is still pretty proggy, but it doesn't necessarily feel like too forced or they're trying to reach for that like prog label. Like it definitely the time signature, the just the interplay between the instruments and the little keyboard riff in the back with just the like orchestra stabs or whatever. It definitely all feels very purposeful. And I really like this intro, especially as it starts to transition into the verse. It is such a cool freaking riff.
Yeah, it's almost like I remember Getty's interview with Dan Rather, where he said, Rush always considered themselves the world's smallest symphony orchestra. It's not like there's a guitar with a rhythm section with bass and drums. They're all doing different things, and it all just comes together in a beautiful orchestrational sort of almost, I don't want to say dark. It's not dark, but just the E chord. Yeah, like Ryder said. Yeah, just a beautiful thing that comes into then the lyrics and the vocal once Getty comes in with that.
I was even actually thinking of Working Man earlier today, where that begins with that low E, but that was more legato, kind of swooping right into those other notes. Whereas this is very, he's really, and like Ryder said, it doesn't sound forced. It sounds like probably someone was sitting or standing around with a Les Paul and just hitting those low chords, and then just
Mhm.
kicked it, or chord really, and then just kicked into kind of like, oh, here's this rhythm that I'm doing that happens to be 10-8. And then, of course, the funny thing is, I'm sitting here with the tab book that I picked up, in 1997. And I like how the transcriber basically has it as a flat key because of the single notes that come after. But for me, I'm just thinking it's E major. Those, sixth fret, fourth fret. It's like, but then again, even though it might have been a professionally done book, these individuals weren't perfect either. And the thing I think of too, the spontaneity, and this is a word from, if anyone wants to check out the Rush fans Instagram page, we were talking about that a little bit last Sunday for Lifeson Day. The spontaneity of Alex Lifeson's playing, the chords that he's choosing, or I should say the notes he's choosing for the arpeggiated line in the intro are, they kind of bridge a couple of keys. This is a song that is just designed to sound appropriate for itself. They're not really thinking in, well, we're going to make this 1-4-5 in the key of E. That's more punk. It just they obviously said, hey, we have this idea, let's chase this idea down the rabbit hole, and they did. And actually,
You
they
mentioned
chased it into the verse. I'll be quiet. What do you got?
no, you mentioned Working Man, which was blues,
Yeah,
like the E But this song is more jazzy. And wasn't this the record after Neil had taken
Right.
some lessons? So Alex is really responding to Neil's drums with more jazzy, sort of offbeat, different keys within a progression that makes it, yeah, new and very interesting.
Yeah, many of these notes are based on kind of some dotted quarters, which are creating sort of a little bit of a 3 against 4 feel, which, is a given in many parts of rock, but certainly jazz to kind of give it that polyrhythm, but not an overt polyrhythm.
Mhm.
Well, hey, let's see what the lyrics have to say, because, obviously that's one reason we're here. It's Neil. So, first verse, long verse, time and motion, wind and sun and rain, days connect like boxcars in a train, fill them up with precious cargo, squeeze in all that you can find, spontaneous elation in the long enduring kind. Time and motion, flesh and blood and fire, lives connect in webs of golden razor wire, spin a thread of precious contact, squeeze in all that you can find. It's basically it's really obviously 2 verses that kind of I just blurred together, because clearly it's 3 lines and 4 lines with time and motion. But what do we have to say about that? I'll stop talking. I'll let other people say stuff.
I think the first three, the days connect like boxcars in a train, echoes, famous Neil's famous quote of "What's the most excellent thing I can do today?" You know, obviously, the day comes, you wake up and it's over, and whatever you did, it's gone, and you've got to move on to the next and let that go.
I absolutely adore the lyrics in this song. I think just like lives connect in webs of gold and razor wire. Are you kidding me? That is such a good lyric. Like I love just how these like weird and seemingly disconnected ideas all kind of like flesh together and just kind of come back to this concept of time and motion and how they kind of interact together. Um, Also, I would feel like just and how they kind of talk about like how lives connect. Um, it's again to get into Test for Echo's kind of overall theme of like communication. I know Paul isn't here to talk about any theme, so I'll fill that in for him for a little bit. Um, like I just love how like I said, he brings up these just random well, I guess not necessarily random because you have things that interact with each other like wind, sun, and rain. All of these things kind of come together, collaborate, communicate, and just kind of act together in just kind of the nature of time and motion.
Kind of like the
And
opening
I just
chords,
hmm?
kind of like the opening of the song itself.
Yeah. It's just these seemingly like disconnected, like strange, I don't know. It's just such an interesting lyric. I love this choice of words and I love just kind of how they flow through the music. They stay kind of right on where Getty's bass line is, which is just a phenomenal riff. Getty and Alex are on fire in this first verse. It is genuinely one of the most powerful moments on this record. I would feel just the intro to this song and coming into this like first verse section. I just adore it.
I agree with Ryder. I think that these lyrics are very abstract and provocative. When I think of the phrase time and motion, what comes to mind, maybe this is because I like science, is space, astrology, science, and physics. But while these are scientific concepts, time and motion are also human experiences and elements in our lives. Time is something that is just always ever present, and it kind of decides how we live our lives, make decisions, how we measure our goals, and so on. And then emotion, whether it's physical or mental, like the phrase going through the motions and time, they're interwoven and synergized. So to wrap that all in a neat little bow, we basically have a commentary on the human experience from Neil, but at a scientific angle, which I find to be quite clever, in my opinion. He's explored time and how humans experience time in previous lyrics, notably Time Stand Still, Turn the Page from Hold Your Fire, my favorite album, but from a different perspective. One of the phrases in these lyrics I find interesting is spin a thread of precious contact. Threads are very small, thin, and unstable. So in my opinion, this seems like this is a reference maybe to the artificiality of a lot of human relationships. Because if you think about it, most people, they have like a close group of friends and family that you're in contact with a lot. But then we have these other people that are just kind of outside in the outer circle of our lives that sometimes we talk to, but we don't really have as much of a connection with. So I find that an interesting juxtaposition because he says, been a thread of precious contact. But then in the next line, I'm sorry, I'm reading this. It says spontaneous elation, the long enduring kind. So a thread is unstable and thin. So maybe he's talking about artificial relationships, but the long enduring kind would be something that's more stable and strong. So I don't know. I don't really know what I think. I just find that to be pretty abstract. Normally I'm like, this means this. So you guys know I really dive into the lyrics, but these lyrics kind of stump me a bit. And I'm sorry if that was a really long commentary.
I was thinking actually earlier too that there's an element of physical science and physics that I was thinking by bringing in time and motion, but then I thought some of these others, it's sort of like, but we do need a philosopher on this to get to this stuff. Because obviously there is that overt physics, but we need a guy who might know a little bit about philosophy to discuss this. Anyone?
I wouldn't know anyone like that, but I'll take a stab. I like what Kira said about the abstractness of the song, which means it's open-ended. And I remember Neil in one of the documentaries, I think it was Beyond the Lighted Stage, where he talked about he writes lyrics and he has ideas and meanings, but people read their own experiences into them, so they're kind of open-ended. And one of the ways I saw this song in terms of the lyrics was that there are two ways to understand it. And one is sort of mundane and dismal, while the other is kind of cool. And it's kind of what you make of it. So you have time and emotion, wind, sun, and rain, and then days connect like boxcars in a train. That kind of seems a little just, we're going through the motions every day and it just moves down the track. That's what it is. But you got to fill them up with precious cargo. So it's not like you can get away from the day-to-day routine and what time and motion does to you, right? You can't control that necessarily. But I think it was Ralph that referred to Neil's famous line, what's the most excellent thing I can do today? Squeeze in that precious cargo, all that you can find. And in that time and motion, boxcars in a train, you might find a little spontaneous elation, right? And the long enduring kind, that thing that kind of gives meaning to life. So I'm like Kira. I don't know what this song means, at least in terms of what Neil meant. I don't have a clue, but I see this kind of, interplay between the mundane and the regular, moving on, and things that, wind, sun, rain, it's all there. But what are you going to do with that? And so I don't know, Alex, if that answers your philosopher.
Well, I was just thinking that, that
I might have missed it entirely. We philosophers do that from time to time too.
Well, I mean, from my point of view, I was originally thinking that when we think of time, we think of motion. We can start to think of obviously the physics of it, but then clearly just the box cars in a train. When he starts to get into those aspects of, once again, it's human existence. It just made me think that it's like David needs to be in on this.
Okay, well, let me speak to that if I can. There's a concept in some branches of philosophy that's called internal time consciousness. In other words, we don't always experience time the same way, right? So the person that might be watching this that thinks we're clueless, this could be the longest episode they ever watched. It takes forever. Well, another person can watch all of the same information and conversation, and man, that just flew by.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we experience time differently, and maybe the way we experience time might be the difference between every day is just boxcars connecting versus what we fill them with. I don't know. I'm just
Yeah, I mean, boxcars.
thinking out loud.
The days connect like boxcars in a train. I mean, it does almost take on that mundane vibe. Whereas then, as was said earlier, we get down to webs of gold and razor wire. It just starts to be more. Is this cool? Is this just a little more intensity? And that's obviously something Neil's done in moving along his verses, basically. I would also mention, if I could, I'm the host. I guess I'll just do it.
Do whatever you want to do.
The Getty's vocals, if we speak to physical science and vibration, most of Getty's vocals are he has them doubled as an octave because he's got the range, he could do it. And in the beginning, when he sings motion, he's basically going from, so at that point, the arpeggio is more of a D minor, although there is a note in there that's not D minor, but it's sort of D up to F, root note up to the minor third, but then he drops to the root, then he drops to a C sharp, then a C, so it's sort of, he's got a nice little chromatic walk down right away. But then by the time he sings Cargo, it's more of a harmony where he has some thirds and seconds and gets a little more in your face at that point. So just even the thing, it's easy to talk about the guitar, it's easy to talk about the drums. We don't have really a dedicated drummer on this, but thinking of Getty's vocals still, just that octave movement, creating that the main voice is the high, the lower is more of the secondary harmony. It's not really a harmony, it's an octave. But in that respect, when he throws in that, as I say, by the time he gets to Cargo, it's just sort of, whoa, a little more direct, maybe.
Yeah, we got these super dense vocal layers with all these super abstract lyrics. I feel like I'm listening to a Yes song right now. It's crazy.
And yet Getty has a lower
That's not
voice.
a bad thing.
Yeah.
So I just had another thought. So he says, squeeze in all you can find twice after he says, fill them up with precious cargo and then spin a thread of precious contact. So maybe he's not just talking about relationships we have with other human beings, whether that's friends and family or etc. Maybe he's also talking about life experiences and how you should try to live, your life and experience as much as possible. I don't know why, but I was thinking in this moment, maybe he's talking about regret a little bit. And I'm only saying this because I'm reading Getty's memoir. I'm a little over halfway through. I'm still in the time period where they were touring in the late 70s. And he was talking about how being on the road so much, they really missed out on a lot of their kids' lives. Like there's one point where Alex's second son, Adrian, was born, but they were on tour in Europe in 77, I believe. It might be 78. Don't quote me on that. So maybe Neil feels some regret. I don't know. I just thought of it
this time period. Yeah.
It's always possible.
No, that's good.
I mean, obviously for Neil, it was always, it's not a case of, is there a life after death? Is there life after birth? So we probably should move into the chorus. Let's do that. That seems like a good place. The long verse, couple of verses, I know I jammed them together, but those choruses are really short. They're spontaneous relations. Wait, the chorus is spontaneous relations and the long enduring kind repeated. So it's this is a time when Neil gets pretty direct with his choruses, and as we say from the Donna rule, that when he's repeating it, he wants you to know this is the point I'm making. Spontaneous relations and the long enduring kind. Thoughts? We haven't heard from Ralph.
Yeah, I was thinking it was connecting back. I was a little perplexed about the line "lives connect in webs of golden razor wire." Because gold, it's good, but then I think razor wire sounds like something that cuts you. So these relations we have, or connections we have, while they're special and good, but they're not always good. They can sometimes hurt you. And So sometimes they last, and and we're trying to find the ones that make us feel good and we can keep them as long as we can. Yeah.
Think of this line: "Spin a thread of precious contact." Makes me think of permanent waves. We're linked to one another, not we knew, by such slender threads. Right. So relationships are tenuous, they're fragile. So squeeze in all that you can find. Spontaneous relations, which just strikes me now as an interesting line for Neil, who really didn't like spontaneous relations, you know, but he did see the value in them, and sometimes they turn into the long enduring kind. So, um, the more we talk about this, like I said, I read the lyrics before we did this episode and read them again and listened to the song, then read the lyrics again, and I'm thinking, I don't know what he's saying. As as we talk about it, it's sort of this tension between fragility in our relationships, and at the same time, they're worth the risk. We might find something of the long enduring kind. And I don't know. Again, I'm thinking out loud. Somebody else talk.
No, I agree. Like when I met Brian 8 years ago, I would have never imagined that he would be my fiance, and now we're both married. So it's just personal. But no, thank you.
Mhm. Yeah, spontaneous.
I think that I was trying to really like figure out what this chorus meant, because I'm sure like you guys, I looked at it really quick and was like, what? Like I just didn't know. But thinking about, just like you said, if you connect it back to the rest of the song, it's all about, obviously spontaneous, like just stuff that happens really quick. But thinking about like the long enduring kind, thinking about the relationships, like earlier in the song, the wind, the sun, and the rain, these relationships that have been like interacting through nature just throughout all of time, basically, especially not to get a little too far into the song, but like Superman and Supernature, like once that comes up. But it's interesting to see the chorus kind of change a little bit. Just it goes from spontaneous elation, relations, and then by the end, it's spontaneous emotion. Um, and I think that just kind of, like you guys were saying, just kind of goes to show that all these different relationships that kind of just keep moving through, whether they be quick or not, they have all these different things that kind of come in just as a part of, being a relationship. This is kind of what comes out of it.
Mhm.
Cool. Well, we go from that chorus into an interlude that calls back some of the instrumental sections that were there. I mean, then the solo right out of the interlude. I mean, basically, what was that interlude? 2, 4, 6, 6 measure interlude I'm looking at here, and then into a rather short solo where he's playing some of those. I don't know. Once again, a very spontaneous, obviously spontaneous solo, and I mean that in the best sense, where he's got sort of these little chord dyad hits, some a little pentatonic, of course, but it's not a fluid solo like Limelight or something like that. It's definitely meant to fit with the song, that has that once again, that punchy. I guess I'm going to keep saying spontaneous. Turn this episode is going to become a drinking game if you haven't already realized it, where we say spontaneous and you take a drink. Except I have water here because I'm hosting, and also because I'm not drinking. So it's basically a case of like, all right, just whatever. It doesn't have to be alcohol. You can drink with like Mountain Dew or something. It's just as dangerous. Anyway, so coming out of that solo, we go back into another chorus where the still spontaneous relations and the long enduring kind. So they kind of wrap around, double the line with the chorus, interlude and solo, back into the chorus, and then heading into the bridge. The bridge gives us a little something different. There is still leading in with that E that's kind of punchy, but then he's got more Lifeson plays more of the arpeggiated lines that are kind of, once again, bridging, I guess, pun not intended, but I'm gonna acknowledge it, bridging the beginning of the song, bridging that jolt of it into something that's a little more dreamy. They're kind of having the dream cake and eating it too. I'm going to throw as many metaphors on this thing as I can. So the lyrics for the bridge: the mighty ocean dances with the moon, the silent forest echoes with the loon. The mighty ocean dances with the moon, the silent forest echoes with the loon. So once again, 4 lines repeated. Ocean, moon, talking about maybe the tides and the control that would be there. Forest, you got a bird that might live in the forest. Anyway, let's see what happens.
Or I like what this bridge is. You got the mighty ocean, and the music very heavy, and then he talks about dancing with the moon, and the music, goes back to light, like very light. He's just kind of tapping on the snare, and the same with the forest, the big forest, and then just the bird, the loon, and how that the lyrics and the music kind of play against each other, or in together, like from strong to light and dreamy to back to strong.
Kind of this constant juxtaposition.
Exactly.
The mighty ocean dances with the moon. So that kind of refers to tides, I think, right? The mighty ocean.
Yeah.
And then the silent forest echoes with the loon, which loon is also kind of a metaphor for a little bit of crazy. Right? So there's
Yeah, I was gonna ask what loon means. That's such a stupid question.
that's not.
The type of bird, I think, up near Canada, I think.
Yeah.
And in one of his books, he does talk about it. I forget exactly which book, but and the sound that they make when he's out on the lake.
Yeah. Have you heard the phrase, "You're such a crazy loon"?
Yes, I've heard that, but I figured that this was in a different context.
One
Who
version
knows? It might be. He might be calling the forest dumb. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, it's like the forest is silent, except there's this crazy loon making all this noise, right? So ocean, moon, tide, juxtaposition, and it seems to go with the overall theme of the song of the predictable, the spontaneous, you know.
One version I had listened to and I couldn't find it again was I actually thought they had the bird call in the song, but I was listening to like on Apple Music and I couldn't hear it. I have to check the vinyl, maybe it's in there.
All right.
Now, I'm not really sure what this bridge is saying, guys.
Okay.
I mean, it's interesting because the ocean and the moon are very far away from each other. They're light years away. I don't know exactly how much, but yet they interact in profound ways because the way that the Earth is orbiting the moon determines, and the sun determines the tides.
One of the things I like too with as I was saying, with what he's doing instrumentally, what Lifeson's doing is that punch of that E power chord, and then the chords that he's using that are the arpeggiated chords that he's letting ring out. They are like instrumentally and lyrically going for kind of a little bit of a opposites kind of situation here. I mean, E on standard tune guitar is it's got that big rock sound, whereas the D minor that he's playing as far as the arpeggio goes is as Nigel Tufnell would remind us, it's the saddest of all keys. So there is a certain degree of little back and forth there. Let's see what that next verse brings us, because after that bridge we have a verse that happens to be a little shorter than that long list that I read before. Time and motion, live and love and dream, eyes connect like interstellar beams. Superman in supernature needs all the comfort he can find.
Now that I find a unique line. Now we're talking about superheroes?
I think he's referencing
Or
Nietzsche and thou spoke Zarathustra, if I'm
Yes.
saying that correctly. Ubermensch, I think
Right.
it was translated maybe incorrectly to Superman or Overman from German.
Yeah, it's been Overman, Superman. They're different,
Right.
translations of Nietzsche's
oh,
Übermensch,
That's what I
which
think he's
is,
referencing.
Neil loved Nietzsche. We know
Mhm.
he referenced Nietzsche a lot in different speeches and things. And um, that's often Nietzsche's idea of the Übermensch is frequently misinterpreted, right? But what most Nietzsche scholars would say about that is that what Nietzsche is aiming for is we should all strive to be the fullness of, our humanity. All right. So Superman is really just what we should strive to be. It's not sort of some overarching dominating figure that wants to control everybody else. That's how Nietzsche gets misinterpreted by people that don't like him. But Superman and supernature, but he needs all the comfort he can find. You know, because there's always this kind of neurotic gap between what we strive to be and where we are. So we need this comfort, you know. And then
that's
we
so
have
true.
but yeah, some spontaneous emotion of a long and enduring kind. And again, time and emotion. Dan keeps going on. Still have to live. Still have to love. Still have to dream. And then sometimes that connection, eyes connect. So Neil, for all his reputation as the offish guy, was really the philosopher of human connection in so many ways. And I think this is coming through this song as well.
Yeah, he didn't take connection lightly. So of course he had thoughts. But I also can't help but think about with the eyes connect like interstellar beams. I mean, obviously there's that intensity of interacting with another person, but that does sort of reach back to the tides and the moon on the ocean, because obviously you are going to get that reflected moon that has more of a perhaps intensity and signature than the sun reflecting off of a bright blue ocean or something. If you're standing on the beach in the daytime, it's the typical picture perfect day, etc. It's all bright, blah blah blah. But at night, that moon hitting the water
Mm,
is more of a strong concentration, and it is an interstellar beam. Just saying.
wow, that's good.
Or I could just be way off. That's what I'm
I don't.
hosting.
I think this song is the most Neil's most intricate lyrics because he has some. I've been enough roundtables to know this. He has some really complex lyrics, but most of his lyrics I can find multiple meanings and I have some kind of idea of what he says. But this song is just very, very just very abstract, very mysterious, and very intricate. I mean, we have metaphors for nature and human relationships, we have metaphors for artificiality in human relationships. And then David mentioned how what people strive to be and where they are is also disconnected, which makes me think, a lot of people have a dream that they can never get to meet because they don't have the money, they don't have the resources, they don't have the support. And even if you do have your dream, you're always chasing something else, right? um you're always moving the goalposts. I mean, Neil went to Freddie Gruber for help, which I'm sure nobody expected at the time. It's like, you're the world's greatest drummer. Why do you need help? But yet he needed guidance. So
Yeah.
I don't know. This is a very philosophical, intricate song, and I think that makes it one of Rush's most unique tracks.
Yeah. Hear what you said about
Um,
Neil going to Freddie Gruber. It's kind of like he felt there was a gap,
yeah,
that he needed to somehow fill.
Yeah, I
I
think
wonder if
this
Neil
song.
could like listen to this and he'd say, "This is interesting, but what are you guys talking about? I didn't mean that at all." That's the beauty of it.
And I think this song, we were talking about Freddie Gruber, this drumming in this song is the most reflective of those lessons. It's like sort of just the timing, for me, just feels off from what Neil would usually do. I mean, it's very obviously great, but just seems different than from before. A little late, like, I don't know, just a little late in the way that the beats go. If that makes sense. I'm not a drummer, but I just feel something different there.
Yeah, just the internal time that wasn't quite as intensely driving because it doesn't need to be at that point in life.
Right.
You know, what else can you appreciate in life as opposed to, like he said, not driving the stick through the snare or any of the drum heads, but allowing it to dance off and have the motion live at the arc where Freddie was looking to have him move to. Well, let's check out some chorus. Final chorus: spontaneous emotion and the long enduring kind. And repeated, of course, spontaneous emotion and the long enduring kind. So once again, we do get that repetition. And I'm just kind of making myself to sort of go through and take a look at what do I have for, how did that song end? We did have more of a little bit of instrumental at the end, of course. Not a fade out, but just kind of landing on that D minor 11. Cool. I don't think they ever played this live, right?
They did very early in the Test for Echo tour. They had it on, like, I think the first, I don't even know if it made it all the way through the first leg, but there are some archival recordings, video and audio online of them playing Time and Motion live, which sounds very, very
stages,
excellent.
right?
Right.
Correct.
It's not on different
it didn't make it to
stages.
different stages.
And I saw the tour and I don't recall seeing it or hearing it. So that, because that was
very few times live.
Yeah.
I know it was played because I was very disappointed that I didn't get to see it. Didn't make it for my show, right? And I think it was on one of the previous roundtables, and that was one of my regrets that I never got to saw that live.
Such a fantastic song, especially from an era where I feel like Rush has just been maligned for so long. Maybe not even just the era, just the album. I feel like once Rush made it out of the 90s and started making their way into the 2000s, they put basically all of this record just totally on hold. And this track, I feel, shows that, you know, a lot of people say Test for Echo is a creative low for Rush. But I can't agree with that when there's songs like Time and Motion on this album that are still so adventurous, especially for where music and a lot of these prog bands were in the late 90s. A lot of them were kind of like, you know, you think about bands that were still kind of like struggling to keep it together. They made a bunch of radio pop in the 80s and it's kind of backfiring on them now. Rush is still a band at the forefront of trying to just like push themselves. You know, who in 1996 was opening with a 10/8 section, you know? All these super abstract lyrics. There's so much here. And I feel like for people who are warm to the rest of the Rush discography, but still aren't entirely convinced about this album yet, I would definitely suggest giving this track a listen. There's so much here, especially for musicians and fans of progressive rock. There's just so much here that shows that late game Rush still had skin in the game. This song is crazy. It's so good.
There's really so much profundity on this record. You know, people, malign it. Like you said, right? It's like, dog ears, what a dumb song. I read something on the internet today about Time and Motion. These lyrics are stupid with two O's and things like that. It's like, I don't know, you might not be listening closely enough. You know,
it's pretty obvious a lot of people aren't listening closely.
And virtuality, I mean, come on. At this time, the things that they're writing about the internet, are more relevant now, with the advances since the 90s and stuff. Yeah, it was a pressing and insightful record all around, and this song is certainly no different.
Very
So
nice.
go Rush.
Yes. So with that, I would say that seems like that's bringing our discussion to a close. We recognize that it did occur live at one point. Perhaps we need to seek that out on YouTube to see if there's a decent recording there, even just to check out. But while you're on YouTube, you can subscribe to us. You could share a video. You could like a video. You could ring the bell. You could smash subscribe buttons. is what you're supposed to do now. Ko-fi, don't forget Ko-fi exists. Yet that's if someone likes what we do and feels like stopping by, it's basically giving it. And also there is a merch shop. I was thinking, I'm not sure what Ralph's wearing, but most of us aren't really wearing any Rush t-shirts.
No.
Ralph's got a Rush t-shirt. Okay, Kira is. I just basically mostly just heads. So I was just thinking.
I'm wearing a local artist, Remy Riley.
So, all right. So basically, just under half of us are wearing Rush t-shirts, but there is the Rush fans merch shop also. Subscribe, check out the merch, check out Ko-fi, check out our sponsors. The links are available, and that is episode number 215, where we discuss Time and Motion, a song that is better than you remember. And if you liked it, it's still better than you remember. You know that. So hopefully we'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us.